Okay, welcome everybody. This is our bug user group meeting, and our theme for this semester is we're focusing on scopes of work. And so last week we heard from Querying in our kickoff a little bit about just site work and that scope. And so this week we're segueing into 4C's with David Ochoa here. He's from 4C's Construction. And then we also have Tyler McCrane down here. He doesn't have his web camera on. Maybe he can sneak it on if it's okay, but we'll take some time to introduce them. But just a little bit about our bug user group. I'm the advisor of the bug user group, the faculty advisor. I'm actually an industry person as well. I own my own project controls company. And so I kind of wear two hats. And this is our first time having 4C's in here as a speaker. So we want to be welcoming to them and respectful of them. So it's really good to have you guys. We do have a couple of industry partners that partner with us. We've got Carrie Rentz here from Querying, and then RJ Palace from AECOM. And so our little bug user group has what we call champion leaders, and then we also have industry professionals that support us. And it's basically a user group, and so it's an opportunity for us to get to know in a more intimate way the speakers that come in, what roles are in your company, also the projects that you're working on or project, and then some tips and tricks. And so our focus this semester is on scopes of work. And so that's why we've invited David Ochoa here. And so I'm going to segue over to David, and we'll just do this popcorn style. So David, it's very good to have you here. Do you want to just do a quick little welcome introduction of yourself, what your role is, your company?
Yeah, so thank you for having myself and Tyler on tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. It's exciting to see so many more individuals that are wanting to join in the construction field. It's always great to have new faces and people that are wanting to build. And so I've been with 4C's Construction. I'm going on 8 years in November of this year. I did 4 years in our operations team, and this will be my 4th year in sales and estimating. So I've had a really good exposure to different areas of the company, from actually building to relationships. So it's nice to see everyone here, and I'm excited to share what we do, how we do it, and why we do what we do. And so yeah, thank you for having us.
Great. Thanks, David. And we're very happy to have you here. I don't know if Tyler's on line and he can introduce himself a little bit. If not, we can skip over you, Tyler.
I can speak on him if you need me to. I can introduce him if you'd like.
Sure.
He's been with 4C's 8 years as well. He is our senior project manager. He takes on our largest projects to date. He has actually 2 project teams that work directly next to him. He does mainly of our work all in the South Valley, up down to LA. So senior project manager, and is part of our leadership team.
Awesome, David. And thanks, Tyler, for coming here. I know I've talked to you a little bit on the phone as well, and so we're very glad to have you. And I want to take a little bit of time just to introduce our industry partners here. So Carrie from Querying, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Carrie Rentz with Querying General. I'm a senior project manager. I've been there for about 8 years as well. Industry for about, 13 or so. And actually, David and I actually worked on an estimate for the job I'm currently on right now. And same thing with Tyler. So definitely we do a lot of work with 4C's. They just installed some real beautiful metal siding for us out here. And yeah, they usually tend to knock it out of the park. We use them on a lot of projects. So kind of excited to see how they secretly get us our numbers.
Well,
oh man,
Gary, and And actually, Carrie recommended David, or actually 4C's, to come and speak with us because of their Bluebeam skills. So we're
Yeah.
really happy about that.
I think
Thank you.
Tyler threw out an option to say, hey, I wouldn't mind doing that. And before we knew it, we sunk our claws into him. So yeah.
Thanks,
So,
Tyler.
yeah, now you
Congrats.
can't get out of it, David.
Hey, no worries. That's what we're here for. No worries.
Yeah,
Carrie.
for sure.
Yeah, and so let's do this. Let's go over to RJ. Are you available that you can just introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have video because I'm out here with my kids. But RJ Palace, digital digital technology manager with AECOM, specifically with the Hunt Construction Group, based out here on Los Angeles. I'm currently working as the VDC coordinator and manager for the Intuit Dome, which is the Clippers arena down here in Inglewood. I started my career as an electrical engineer, so by profession and education, I've been doing that for about more than 10 years. And then I went over to the GC side of things the last 6-7 years. Been doing BIM coordination, BIM coordinator, and then sort of transitioning over to more of a digital technology and selecting the right technology solutions for at least the Southwest region in the US. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, RJ. And RJ is partnering with us for the first time here this semester. And so we're very happy to have his skills in VDC and digital technology. So it's good to have you here, RJ. Let's just a reminder, I think we do have some students that are graduate students from India. And so one of the things if we can get them to turn on their video cameras, I think some of it is just new being here. So don't take that personally, David, but I'm hoping
No worries at all.
Yeah, I hope that they do turn on their web cameras here. And we also have, I just want to check before we get into the actual presentation. We've got an iPhone here that's not identified. Did I let you in? Can you identify yourself if you're on an iPhone?
This is RJ, Chris. I'm using an iPhone. I don't know if that matters.
Oh, maybe that's you. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And then it looks like Sohail came in here too. So Sohail, I know you're a graduate student. I think you might be on an iPhone. We'd prefer to have you on video if you can, but if you're just listening in on audio, that should be fine. So just a little housekeeping here. If you are a student or a professional, if you could put yourself on mute while the presentation is going. I know I see Sohail on here without his mute on. Looks like he's coming into the room. And also log yourself in with your full name and last name and what class you're here for. Okay. And if Sohail, if you could put yourself on mute, that'd be great. Okay. Okay. Hopefully we don't get interference here. So welcome, David. I'm going to turn this over to you. And we welcome you, and I'll just kind of guide the questions here. David did say that if any of you have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat. Matt Forney and I will be kind of facilitating and keeping an eye on the chat. You're also welcome to unmute yourself, ask your question, and then please mute yourself back so that we don't get any audio interference. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you, David. And so if you could maybe do a little introduction of your company and what you guys are doing there, it'd be great.
Yeah, so again, thank you for having us. I've been here for 8 years, like I mentioned, and with that, along with Tyler, we've been able to be part of the process of growing and changing and implementing new techniques, new software, new approaches to construction, specifically in the field that we're in, which is architectural metals. We're a full custom sheet metal fabrication shop, meaning we can, bend, break, laser cut, weld, solder, just about any metal. We don't do structural steel. Um, um, like Carrie mentioned, we put up really nice looking metals on buildings, whether that's logos, whether that's for waterproofing. We're also waterproofers. So I mean, 4C's, if I go back into history, the company has been around since 1980. It did start off as a mom and pop shop, and I want to share with you guys a little bit this timeline, if you don't mind me, Christy, sharing an actual timeline of the company. So when I say the company started, as a small mom and pop shop, we mean it actually started with the mom and the dad, and so. And then it's a very large company now. We're a very large, small family-owned business. And so I want to share with you guys something we've actually put together. Here, give me a second. I'll pull it up. So share this with everyone. And so 4C's Construction did not start off as 4C's Construction. It started off as actually 4C Service, DAC Service Inc. And the founders are Dale and Carol Cross. Dale and Carol Cross started off, and I'll jump into the history here, on the back of a pickup in 1980. And Dale's mission and his goal was to help roofers do re-roof jobs. Nowadays, we see beautiful, nice buildings going up. We see a lot of new construction. Back then, the buildings weren't as nice. Back then, the buildings weren't as big, especially in this area in the valley. We don't look around and see, skyscrapers all around or massive buildings. So re-roofing is very common with the heat. So updating mechanical units, because they go out. And so Dale, since 1980, that's what he did. So and I won't go through everything here. There's a lot on our website that we have here, but basically he started off in his garage, in the back of his pickup truck. And Dale had this work ethic that was impressive, meaning he would negotiate a job during the day, measure it, go home, and actually hand break the pieces of metal to make gutter, to make a roof flashing, to make a mechanical curb, some caps. And so that's the work ethic that is basically ingrained in 4C's Construction, which is what it is now. It all started with Dale and Carol. Carol was a bookkeeper. She was also sometimes a delivery driver of the materials. They worked hand in hand for a long time, and then you can look through the timeline on our website that I'm showing here. Is move to a larger office, to a larger facility. We've been in this building that we're at now in downtown since 1999, 1998, 1999, and we're still growing. We have close to 100 employees now. We started off with 2. I did also want to mention that as the company grew, so did our capabilities. Our scope of work has changed. You mentioned, Christy, you have your own business. Well, 4C's Construction didn't always do the same thing. We always did multiple things. We're a very diverse company. We help small customers to very large customers, customers that are very close, customers that are very far away. So in 1999, we actually rebranded to 4C Service. And as the economy went crazy, went a little bit sideways, 2008, 2007, 2008, we were running a very lean crew, 2-3 man crew, but we made it through. And actually in 2011 is kind of when things started to shift to 4C's Construction. And in 2011, we had what we call a split in the company, meaning we now have a full fabrication sheet metal shop that we name Advanced Metalworks. And then we have our full construction company, which is 4C's Construction. And Dale and Carol, with their 2 sons, Preston and Graydon, they made this distinction. They made this separation because of how much work 4C's was doing. And We got away from the small re-roof jobs. We got away from the small, complicated, messy work, if you will. We still do it. It's not what we would like to do all the time, but we still do it for our customers. We never say no. And now we're 4C's Construction since 2011. Our parent company is still DAC Service Inc., 4C Service. And ever since 2011, we've seen the growth of, and you can tell now, the team growing, the crew's growing. In 2013, if you guys notice here, and I was asked to mention this, we actually now as a company offer Dave Ramsey, if you will, personal finance classes and training, because the company believes in being debt free. The company is debt free. We hope that everyone within the company is debt free so they can be successful, so they can provide a good living for their family, and the company pays for that. The company provides that as a benefit. Company also does a lot of things for their employees. We mentioned here in 2014, we go to company picnics. We go to Wonder Valley. Last year we went to Dave and Buster's. We go bowling. We go to camping trips. We do a lot of things for our workers, for our people, for our team members, because we understand that without them, there is no 4C's Construction. And that all goes back to Dale's work ethic. He didn't say no when somebody needed something. He was there. He still does it. He is not actually working day to day, but he'll show up. He came by this morning to say hello, just to see how everybody was doing. But Preston Cross is now the president and CEO of 4C's Construction. And with that, I want to move into kind of the biggest change that we've had in the recent past. Is in 2018, we actually were awarded the largest project in our history in Matilda Torres High School. And that is a very large project that's in Madera. And I want to show you guys some photos here of kind of what we do, where I mentioned at the beginning, Dale started with re-roofing jobs, small bit jobs, going all the way to Idaho, to Utah, to Nevada, to all the way to Oregon, to now building new high schools, new colleges, working at Fresno State. This is something Tyler was actually the project manager on this project. He was on there for 2 complete years with this project team, and it was intricate to this project. We were successful in the project, and this is a very important project for us. This is what we strive for every day, to provide a great product, a great facility for students to go learn, whether or hospitals for health reasons. And so this is what 4C's does. We work on architectural metals. These buildings look like they should be in the Bay Area or in very large cities, but they're here in our backyard. And we're starting to see more of this, and which is why in 2011 there was a shift in the focus to the actual envelope of the buildings, understanding what it takes to build something like this. They don't happen overnight. AECOM and Corey and Kerry, you can speak on that. These projects take years to develop, and so we like to work very close with the customer, with the client, and that all comes from. And I keep going back to Dale because he really strived and pushed to have that work ethic and understanding that we're not just here to make money. We're not just here to build. We're here to provide service. We're here to provide a great product. And so I can go on and on talking about the company because it's a great place to work at. It's great people to work with. And so.
Hey, David.
Yes.
RJ from AECOM said, how does he join 4C's? It sounds like a great company culture.
I mean,
that was more of a joke, but more
I know.
to highlight the great company. So yeah.
I mean, it's you can apply on me. You can come to the office and we can talk.
Yeah, well, and the thing is I really like that Dave Ramsey stuff. That's really awesome because I just want to say that, we get students that are coming in from different countries
Mhm.
or just haven't had, you know, that they're first year students, first
Yeah.
generation students. And that's one thing that we're seeing. And this, I'm just making this comment in general to the students that are here. We end up having to help students as like me as a faculty advisor.
Mhm.
I offer some of those little tips and tricks
Yeah.
financially
Mhm.
for students, and it's definitely something that in the Valley that I think is really important, especially for first generation students that are
Yeah.
coming into their careers. So it's really nice to hear that you guys offer something like that.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, like I mentioned, I could speak on the company a lot. Um, I work very close with Preston. I work very close with um Dale, and that doesn't mean because I'm special. That just means because that's how intricate and how important all this is to the actual family that started the company. They care genuinely about the worker. They care genuinely about us as individuals, um, and which is why, it's easy to speak about the company. It's easy to tell the story. But like you mentioned, we're a testimony. I'm a testimony of, you know, when somebody helps you and they do it out of the kindness of their own will, their own heart. If you, it sounds a little cheesy, but it's true. Um, people are very successful, and that's kind of what, in a nutshell, that's what 4C's is. We provide a great service and a great place to work at, so people can be successful, so their families can prosper, they can grow, and we can you know, build great things doing that. And so, we specialize in metal, and we want to kind of showcase a little bit about what we do and how we do it and what we look at. And when Carrie sends over drawings and documents, what that means to us. When Gurdeep does it too, we look at it from a lens of how can we protect our customer to make sure that whatever gets built is built right and is looked at right from the beginning. And so those are our values. Um, those are our principles that we live by every day. And so we just put processes in place, we put standards in place so that regardless who comes in, they get the same training, they get the same experience, same exposure, um, that we do, that we get, and that we got. And so, um, that in a nutshell is 4C's. I did want to mention when I talk about large projects, um, and 4C's, and is we do work from Sacramento all the way down to Bakersfield. We've actually gone down all the way to Ventura, to Riverside. Um, we've gone. We have a lot of projects in San Luis Obispo, in San Francisco. We have a lot of projects in Bakersfield and Sacramento. And I did want to mention and show a couple of what it means to, when I say architectural metals, this is kind of what we mean. This is, for us, these are what we want to build. This is what we want to do. This is I don't know if you're able to still see my screen in the
Yes,
photo.
we can see it.
So this is a project we did and finished in 2018. This project actually took about 3 months to do, which is a very aggressive schedule. But it's in San Ramon. They get rain, and this is the headquarters of a massive facility in Bishop Ranch, and it's a really large facility. It's their headquarters, and these are all copper panels. And it's a very beautiful building, beautiful project. Those are copper panels, and so this is what Tyler and I get to come to work and do every day. Is look at stuff like this. Um,
That's funny. I lived up in San Ramon around that time, and I remember that building going on.
Oh, that's awesome.
I didn't know it was 4C's. I had never interacted with you guys at that time, but yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, we've done some entrance work at the place. It's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful town. Really nice work. But this is what we do. I mean, these are radius tapered panels. It took about 6 months to get the copper, but this is kind of what we do. We look at these things because the building was leaking, and on a facility like this, the owner wanted it done right. So we took off the panels that someone else did, and we fixed it. We've also done and worked on the student union here in Fresno State. And so this project we completed with McCarthy Builders. It took about a year in design build. It took about a year in permits, in fire, in the with the fire marshal inspection, there were some delays there. But that's, when you build something this big, this size, in such a short time period, there's a lot of things that have to go into it to be built right, be built correct. And so we built this with McCarthy Builders. These is when we say architectural metals. These are metal wall panels. We have to make these with custom colors. You guys can comment or question as I speak. I feel free to ask as to how this happens, and we'll get more into depth as to what it actually means to build this.
Was that project through the DSA?
I believe it was not DSA.
It was not? Okay.
So
it's not
David, this goes back to the Madera High School project.
Yes.
And I just wanted to let everybody know this in case they're not keeping an eye on the chat, but Matt Mendelin, one of our students here, he's actually in one of my classes. He asked how many team members would be on a project like this, and I think it was related to the Madera project. And then Tyler made a comment here, and I'll just read what Tyler said. He said at that project, which was the Madera High School project, we had a full-time project manager, a superintendent, project engineer, and install teams varied from 6 to 14 people. A typical large project for us will have 2 to 8 installers on a site, depending on phase and project.
Correct.
With the same number of office support people. So, just a comment on here, even though you guys are a sub, you still have a lot of people on the site,
Yeah, yes. Yeah, so to speak a little bit more on that, we have a project manager, and a project manager, and Tyler can correct me if I'm wrong, might have 15 or 20 projects at a time. And that project manager has a superintendent and has a project engineer drafter. And so we have 3 full-time workers on every single job. You can say juggle because that's kind of what happens. And so regardless, we get it done. If we need to have 3-4 foremen on a job full-time, that's what happens. There are projects where we have to have 3 foremen on the job because of skilled and trained requirements. And that's what the state of California requires. And that's what we do, and they have to have a certain amount of hours worked on a public job. They have to have a certain license and training and whatnot, and education based besides college or high school. This is on the job. Some have to actually go through ACT or ABC. And so our crew sizes and our types of crews vary between 2 to 8. Sometimes we might have 5 to 6 guys that have been here 10 years, and that's a great crew.
Great, thanks, David. And Augustin, who is here tonight, he's a student. Augustin is on our commercial team. He asked, and he actually is the leader in my 150 class of his scope of work team that's doing metal studs and different kinds of metals tomorrow. So he asked the question, at what point in the project do you start installing your exterior panels? Do you need to rent the boom lifts, or do you own some of the equipment?
So Tyler, I'm looking at the chat now. I see what you're seeing now. So we usually, the way projects happen, I got to tell a little bit of the backstory so I can answer the question on that. So when the project starts, meaning there's a permit set of plans or a DSA approved set of plans, that means there's a permit. That means we can actually, the general contractor can break ground. So therefore, all the underground work has to be done. Sometimes that takes 3 months, sometimes it takes 6 months, 9 months. Depends on how much work needs to be done to get power, the infrastructure to the site. So when we get a contract, usually there's a baseline schedule there that shows where the general contractor is projecting the exterior envelope to be worked on. Metal studs, wood studs, tilt up, cast in place, you name it. There's a lot of types of actually, building types that we work with. With that said, we work backwards from that schedule and understand we have to get lead times on our materials. Custom colors take 2 to 3 times longer. Aluminum, depending on the time of year, takes longer. Copper actually has to be mined and produced to order. Understanding how metal is produced, is intricate, but we work backwards from the baseline schedule, and we monitor it every single month. The general contractors, and we do this with quarrying, and we do this with the larger contractors. There's monthly meetings or 3-week look ahead schedules, 6-week look ahead schedules. But our scope of work doesn't start at the metal panels. Our scope of work starts at the foundation. So once the walls are coming up and they're being framed, we usually have plaster subs. We usually have glazers that are having to measure, that are having to waterproof their stuff, and we have to put in sheet metal. That has nothing to do with the metal panels. That has to do with the waterproofing. That has to do with the enclosure of the building. And so, with that, and I want to show you guys what that means, because it's a great question. I just want to make sure I answer it properly. And so that's where our submittals and shop drawings come in handy for us with the schedule, because it helps us understand what we have to do on the job. And then, like Tyler said, the project manager monitors this, and he pulls the equipment that's necessary. Some projects are very tall, some projects are very small. Regardless, they all take time. They all require us to be at a job site at a certain time. And so, I don't know if you can see my screen, but this is the elevations for our sheet metal shop drawings. GSM
And we're
for
good,
us.
David.
Okay, for us, GSM means general sheet metal. Different from metal panels, different from root panels. And so this is sheet metal that is intricate to other subcontractors, whether that's a plaster sub, whether that's a glazer, whether it's a steel sub, whether it's whoever's doing the underground or whoever's doing the concrete. We have to work with them, sometimes for downspout connections, sometimes for the actual just the base flashing around the building. So you'll notice that in our sub drawings, we color code everything because we want to be as clear. And when you talk about scope of work, we want to make sure that you as a customer, general contractor, or the owner knows exactly what you're getting from us and where you're getting it. And so that all starts from estimating and bidding the project. So, and we'll go into that a little more detail. But to answer the question is, we basically make sure and we follow the critical path of the schedule. If the glazer needs parcel pans in so they can measure their openings for their window frames, if the plaster stuff cannot start putting their lath on the building because we're holding them up, or they can't do the scratch or the brown coat because we're holding them up, that's when we're on site. That's when we're measuring it. So when you look at these red highlights, those are window flashings. And so around the windows there's flashings that are not panels that you don't see when you walk down the building. You don't see that, but that's intricate to the building envelope, to the building closure for water. And so these are our shop drawings. So middle squaring, you've seen these. And so this is what we do. This is what we provide. Schedule wise, we monitor it because we in a 12-month project, we might be there 6 months, 6 months after it started. So we might be there from month 6 to month 12. We might be one of the last ones on job sites. In terms of equipment, we rent up to 120-foot booms, swing stages when the building is too tall. Depending on the access, we might have to rent scaffolding, scissor lifts, boom lifts, radars, reach lifts. Sometimes even cranes all the time for us. We do own some equipment ourselves. We rent a lot of it out because, like I mentioned, our project managers have 15, 20 projects active, and moving around equipment is expensive, and others can do it faster and better than we can. And so we just rent it. And, every job we bid carries a cost for equipment. So we have the conversation whether it's scaffolds, then we can save money. If it requires our equipment, then we carry the cost. And so, but we have project managers, superintendents that handle that. They pull that. We have great relationships. We have contracts with rental equipment companies. They were here yesterday to talk about terms and to talk about what expectations are from 4C's for them. The same way we get expectations from a general contractor and an owner. So, did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
So I was
David?
yes,
RJ has a question for you
yeah, good.
from AECom. He said, do you carry the scope for supplemental steel for your system, or is that by another trade?
So Tyler answered it. So Tyler answered it. Supplemental steel, Z-furring is what Tyler mentioned. Hat channel, anything that is a subframe system. So we talk about continuous wall assemblies or continuous insulation wall assemblies, whether it's an armor therm, whether it's a smart CI, whether it's a night wall system. After your frame is up and after your dens is up or your sheathing of the building is up, we'll take it from there. Whether that requires a 6-inch girt, 4-inch girt, 2-inch girt, 1-inch girt, and we can make it or buy it from someone, depending on the specifications of the project, depending if it went through DSA or the customer wants something specifically because that's how the building was designed. We carry that in our bid. I mean, this project specifically, at Fresno State, in the shop drawings, you'll see there is a girt system here. And oftentimes the girt system is for airflow, so it helps cool down the building. Oftentimes it's because the framing might be at 24 inches on center and the product requires it to be at 16 inches on center. So then we add additional supports. So we carry, if the project requires us to carry something, there we will carry it. And we'll have a conversation with the general contractor if that's needed to make sure that we carry the cost, because everything carries a cost. If we don't need to carry it and the project can perform great without it, no need to add cost. If it needs it because of something within the design and then engineering analysis, then we will carry it and we'll have a conversation. And also that ties into Title 24 for us. So does that answer the question for RJ?
Yes, sir. Thank you. That's very
Yeah.
detailed. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And just I do want to clarify, one thing that I just thought about is usually when we hear someone say supplemental steel, that for me automatically requires me to ask what you mean by supplemental steel. And so it depends on terminology and who interprets what words in what way. So when we hear steel, we hear something that is 1/8 inch or thicker than 10 gauge. And so then we ask the question, is that something that's actually structural steel? Is that part of the structural package, or is that a miscellaneous piece of metal that someone needs to cover because it requires it, whether it's a shim, whether it's to provide some extra additional attachment there. So for us, it's identifying what you mean by supplemental steel, and then we can move on forward with what that means, and we'll cover it, or somebody else will.
So that's great clarification, sir. Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, no problem.
And David, Matt Mindlin, one of our students, asked another question. Does 4C's use a specific program like PlanGrid, Procore, etc., or do you use whatever program the GC uses? Tyler made the comment from 4C's, we use whatever the GC uses, but internally we use PlanGrid, Bluebeam, AutoCAD, Foundation primarily.
Yeah,
so I don't know if you want to add to that.
Correct. We use in different phases of in different parts of our company, we use different ones. So most, if not all of us, use PlanGrid for office use. It's the best product you can use for reviewing plans, making annotations, even doing takeoffs if you set it up the right way. PlanGrid on the move is awesome on the iPad. You know, we use it all the time to coordinate. AutoCAD, I mean, it's hard not to build without AutoCAD. And then Foundation is our accounting software that's integrated also with our estimating software. That's also integrated with our scheduling software. And so it depends on what levels of it. I mean, we have to adapt to whichever general contractor needs us to use for tracking. We have to work with contractors that use Procore. We use Building Connected to keep track of bids and track that. It's a great product. Others might disagree. That works for us. And then it just really depends on the type of project and what the owner might require something. The owner's rep might use something different. even a different owner for a school might require a different way to receive certified payroll. Depends on what the owner entity requires from the terms of the agreement from the beginning. So we use a lot of softwares programs.
And David, I don't
Yeah.
know if you're ready to do this or not, but I think many of our students are probably curious about how you go about, taking off this particular scope of work. Like, where do you start? What are some tips,
So yeah, I can get into it. I did want to be able to make sure I answer that. Is I wanted to explain a little bit why we organize ourselves and why we set ourselves up in the way we do. Meaning, and I want to show you guys a quick presentation because I think it'll help outline a little bit of how we are organized and how Bluebeam isn't just used to do a takeoff or do some highlights, but we actually use it, and a lot of people use it, and it's almost a must for us to be able to use it, be versatile in it, and be innovative with it. So I wanted to show you guys a PowerPoint. Let me see if I can share this.
You might have to reshare, David, like stop and then reshare for it to show up.
I'll share. Okay. And then let's start with this. I think this is it. Yeah. Sure. Okay, so can you guys see what
Yes,
I'm showing?
you're good to go.
Okay. So this is the project, and I'm gonna use this project as to show you guys how we do a takeoff and why we organize ourselves the way we do in Bluebeam. So give me a second. On my side, it's go. So I mentioned that I talked about this a little bit. Preston is the president CEO. We have John Chambers, who handles all of our operations, construction, and then business manager is Linda, and she handles what we call the front office, the accounting, the payroll. In part works with the estimating the same way that John works with us as well in estimating and sales. We have a leadership team. Tyler is on there. We have again John, Linda, Julie, safety director Jesus. Tyler's our senior project manager, and we have a pre-con manager, Kathy, as well. And so everyone here set the project, the construction from a different lens so we can build this thing the right way. And so everyone has a different task, everyone has a different responsibility. And then we have the estimating team, myself and Chris. We have our finance team, which is Julie, Tawny, Jennifer, and now Martha. Then we have our risk management team. And so I have to spend a lot of time working with Linda, Melina, Jesus, because we want to make sure we're compliant at all times. We want to make sure that we're meeting whatever the project requirements are from the beginning. And so we keep track of that. Then we have our actual operations team is, our construction team. It's John. We have 4. We actually just hired on our 5th project manager, Derek, and he is stationed in Sacramento because of the amount of work we have up there. Project manager, we have Aaron. He is all of our Bay Area work. He handles all of that. For instance, Querying has a new office out in Pleasanton, and he handles all the projects and contracts with Querying there.
Aaron's an ex-querying guy too.
Yes, he is.
Ain't wrong. Yeah,
it's true. James Karanja, he is North Valley. Elizabeth Lopez is local and a little bit of South, and then Tyler actually oversees Elizabeth, and he handles all of our South projects and local large projects. And Kathy, she basically works with all of our project engineers and supers to make sure that whatever specified or whatever we submit as submittals, draw, is able to perform, meet the specification, the requirements, the aesthetics, all within the project schedule. And so she's big and she's key on that. Then we have I wanted to show you guys a kind of a flow of what it's like for us to build, what it's like to us to, when we get a bid invite or a general contractor comes and says we're working on this design build project and we need your assistance. We want you to be part of the team. And so it goes through bidding, in which I'll show you guys a little bit of the takeoff portion of that. And so we review every bid invite that comes through. We make an analysis and then we either add it into our calendar or decline it. Like Tyler said, depending on the schedule, depending on the owner, depending on the type of work that's going to be required, depending on the labor requirements from the state or the federal. Then we move on to the award portion, which is number 2. We have an internal initiation. Here, everybody is aware that basically gets everything into motion. We push it through to our contracts admin, and she just makes sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do from the beginning. And then we move on to 3, which is our pre-con. That's where I myself sit down with the project team. We spend an hour to 2 to go over the project, what we bid, what we took off, how many linear footage of this, how many linear footage of that, how much, how much caulking do we have on this building? How many fasteners? Are they stainless steel? It's in the coast. Does it need a marine coat finish on it? It's by the mountains. Do we have engineering? The type of equipment that we figured to execute this project. All those questions and a little bit of kind of what we're going to talk about today is discussed within the hour to 2 on every single project we get, regardless of size, whether it's a $10,000 project or $1 million. It's treated exactly the same. We don't want to look at a project and say, it's not a big deal. We make mistakes when we get sloppy. So we treat all the projects with the same intensity. Then we move on to within that pre-con, all our submittals and shop drawings are done. And I'll go into more depth on these if you guys need me to. And I do have another slide that'll show you guys kind of those steps within each one. But then after we get our submittals and shop drawings, we're able to order those long lead items. Some take 3 months, some take 6 months, some take 9 months, depending on where the material is coming from. Some come from Germany, some come from Switzerland, some come from China, some come from Japan. We're dependent on a lot of things with the economy. A lot of the products that are required, come from overseas. So we track that and we notify that and we communicate that with the general and the owner. Then we build, and that's our submittals are drawn and designed to help build this the most efficiently, the most effective way to stay within the budget, to make sure that whatever it is that we drew, we put in the building. And then we have this mindset of, on number 5 is project close, that we call it burn the ship. So once we're out of there, we're out of there. And we want to make sure that we don't have to go back. So we do our own pre-punch walk, and get with the general contractor before the punch walk. So that way when the architect and the owner come by, it's an easy approval. We don't like to go back to a project 6 months after we're supposed to be done to fix something. That's shame on us. So we go with this mindset of we burn the ship. And then after every project, we schedule a post-con to do an autopsy and understand, were we successful? Where did we succeed? Do we need to fix some things, correct some things, and what did we learn from it? And so that's the project review life cycle. And this is what it means for us to do an estimate. So Carrie, when you ask, we need a bid, this is everything I do. And so I look at it as 4 steps. So you talk about, on the whole meeting is about scope and takeoff. That's step number 2 and step number 3. And I can tell you we take more on the scope letter than we do on the actual takeoff. Because once we build the scope letter, we can have conversations with the general contractor as to what the expectation is from them for us. We can make sure that the project specifications are met, the project aesthetics, we don't want to put something on the building and it's going to look like garbage later. And so that's where the scope letter allows that time and that to have that discussion. And then once we have a scope letter built, we follow that with our takeoff. If we say we have metal wall panel type 2, we have metal wall panel type 2, and we look for that everywhere, single plan sheet. We say metal panel type 1, we look for that as well. And we look at the smallest pieces of metal to the largest pieces of metal. There's a reason why the architect drew something the way he drew it, and we're going to draw it. We're going to capture it in our takeoff, and during the submittals, whether that needs to change or needs to be modified, we have that discussion then. But we want to make sure we capture everything that's required to build this building properly. So our scope of work is sometimes on the site drawings. Our scope of work is sometimes in the structural drawings. Mainly, it's in the architecturals. So we comb through all the drawings. So after that, at the end of the day, it is business and it is construction and there is competition. And so I think we do a pretty good job at providing a great service and a great product to customers. And you know, we will go to bat for our great customers. And so we fight for our work as well. And we think we do a great job at it. And so this is what the estimating looks like, and we'll go into depth on number 2 and number 3, scope and takeoff. Then we talked about pre-con, which is all of our submittals, our handoffs, because what you guys will see is everything that I do on the estimating side, I share and I give everything to our construction team. I don't keep anything, and I want to make sure that whatever I provide is as clean, as transparent as possible. Like we mentioned, some projects take 2 years to build. Sometimes certain scopes don't happen until a year into the job, and we don't remember what we did a year ago. So we want to make sure that we have it accounted and it's clear where we have it accounted for, which is why we do takeoffs the way we do, which is why we take the time to highlight the way we do, which is why we do the shop drawings that reflect our takeoff. If there's something that isn't clear, we RFI it. If there's something that doesn't look right, we have a discussion and teamwork to build these things. And so we have a project team. We have 5 to 6 people. That's all they do. The project engineers. This is all they do is work on submittals, shop drawings, RFIs, coordination, make sure that whatever is that we're providing works, performs, and looks great, and all within a budget, all within making sure we captured it in the bid and the takeoff. So you talked about when are we on site? Well, we have to order materials, and so some products that we do take, for instance, this Fresno State project took a very long time to get the materials. There was 6 profiles and 6 colors, if I'm not mistaken, on this job, and so we had to buy a minimum of each color, and each one had a different profile. So we had to buy different coils, massive, 5,000-pound coils, bring them to our facility. We slit them, cut them to size, and bend it to fit those profiles. And then our guys on the field do a great job of putting it up on the building. But this is key to us. Then we do a foreman pre-con. So we communicate everything that's done in our submittals to our foreman. That way he can, if it's boots on the ground, successful, knows what he's doing. That the project team on site, meaning the general contractor, is trusting that our foreman knows what he's doing. The expectation knows, for instance, Fresno State has a pattern. Our foreman needs to be educated that he needs to follow that pattern. And if there's a panel that's off, we need to know ASAP. So his task to make sure that whatever it is that we ordered, whatever it is that we drew, whatever it is that we bid, is done right on site. And superintendents help with that as well, and our project managers. We do daily and weekly tracking. We mentioned plan grid. We do daily reports daily. We do inspections every time we put flashing on the building, piece of sheet metal, take a picture and take a report. Because we want to make sure we track and know that if there's ever any testing, any inspections, that we can show what we did, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We track this, we log it on public works jobs. We have to provide this on every single job. It's required. And we demobilize, close out. And so, as mentioned again, we do a pre-punch walk before the punch list, because we want to make sure that we're done. We're not an issue to the general contractor or the customer. That's the last thing a general contractor and a customer want is they can't get occupancy on a building because something is off, because something is wrong. And so we want to make sure we're in and out successfully, and it allows everyone, all that time to be a success. And then this kind of shows a overall step by step of everything we do, from bidding to project award to handoff to submittals to approvals to ordering to pre-con to punch walk and to mobilize. And so that's kind of when the bidding and the estimating is a small portion of a lot of things that happen. And we just need to make sure it's done right from the beginning to make sure that everything else flows great from there. Because if I miss something in a takeoff, if I miss something in a scope, there's no way we're gonna get more money for it, because that's the expectation. And so that's the standards that we live by here at 4C's. Those are our values. We see it, we own it, and we do it. And Tyler can attest to this. If we miss something, we will stand up and say we missed it. And we'll, we're all adults, and so we get after it. But I'll show you guys now, and we'll move into
You better be careful. You're recorded saying that now. So
oh, hey, it's on our website, man. I can't. It's on our website.
Hey, David.
It's on my business cards too.
We have a few questions before you transition. And I want to make one comment before we do the questions.
Yeah.
I hope the folks that are on the commercial team are watching his presentation. I don't know who did the design of your presentation, but they did a fantastic job.
Oh,
did you do it?
I did some of it, but our pre-construction manager Kathy is awesome.
Oh yeah, we may have to. We might have to ask you about that later.
Usually the marketing people that can sell that, that can really put that together.
I know. I was like, well, maybe he did some of it, but we have to put a full RFP together for our commercial team, and we're always looking for great ideas, and so we need help with the design of our RFPs. So we might talk to you after this about that. But there's a few questions here. So RJ and Tyler has given some answers. What's the most asked question asked to the design team? And Tyler said, tough question. Typically, our questions would be related to how to achieve design intent within the constraints of constructability and material limitations. Over the past few years, we've been doing, he's just added something here and I lost track. Over the past few years, we've been doing a lot of proposed solutions to minimize oil canning in material with wide flat faces. So maybe you can describe what he means by that.
Yeah, of course. So usually when we get a set of plans and it comes from a vision, whether the school has money that they're going to spend to build a new school, and then the architect has an RFP and they design to that, and we can use Matilda as a reference, and I'll share that again, or just let's stay with Fresno State. That way it's a little more, you guys, I'm assuming most of the students have seen the facility, have been there. But it's my first question when we came across this project and McCarthy brought it to us was, it's a tall building for Fresno. It's not common to have 3-4 story buildings. It's large, it's got a lot of square footage, and it has, there's concrete walls, there's a lot of fireproofing here. Does our portion of the work have to be NFPA 285 rated? What does that wall assembly look like? Is there a certain code that's going to apply? Is it 6 months later, are we going to get stopped by the fire marshal? And and guess what happened? They said we didn't need any fire rating on certain areas, and the fire marshal stopped the project. And so, because there was a fire code requirement that had come into place during the code change and update, and the project had a stop notice. And so that fire testing and coding and whatever they did had to be fixed. And so we went back and forth on cost for mineral wool installation, because it allows for fire rating while giving you some more value for your Title 24. So for me, and like Tyler said, it's what's the design intent? What codes do we have to make sure we have covered? Because the more stringent the code, or the more components, the more cost. And the more cost, the budget's set, 2-3 years ago, maybe sometimes. And the more you add to a building because the code changes, that adds cost to the building that you can't work around. And so I like to have that conversation up front and understand, you want this. This is your intent. I mean, for instance, if we looked at Fresno State, another portion Tyler was talking about was the oil canning, which means the metal with heat expands and contracts. And the larger the metal and the thinner the metal, the more that metal wants to pull, wants to pinch on itself. When it's hot, it expands. When it's cold, it contracts. And so when you pin it with the fastener, with the rivet, whether it's us or someone else, something is preventing that metal from expanding and contracting. So therefore, we call it oil canning, because it basically starts to wave with the heat, and the hotter it gets, the more it will oil can. At night, it wants to come back to its original shape and has to fight it. And so we want to protect the customer. There's a lot of money that's being put into these buildings. We want to make sure that when they have a wall that's, from here to here might be 7-8 feet, you can't put a module that is, it's going to cost you 2-3 times as much, but you can't put a module that is 4x7 there with a very thin gauge. It can't be a sheet panel. It has to be composite panel now. And that's 3-4 times as costly. And then when you have prevailing wages, that adds more cost to the labor. That adds more cost to the job. And so our questions come from protecting the owner, the customer. Architects put a lot of time and design into these things. And when we tell them, you can't build that because it's going to oil can, that's not a great conversation, because they already have this idea. They already have these concepts built. They already have these schematics. For instance, we did a project with quarrying last year. It took about a year to build out in Valley Children's Hospital, the office building. And we asked all these questions. We put the building had to be fire rated. We had to put large modules. It had to match the storefront mullions, meaning there had to be at every single window. And that's the aesthetic they wanted. And so we met that, but those are the questions we usually ask. It's, what are the requirements? What are the things you must have? Do you already have this vision, this idea that we have to figure out how to get to it? Or are you willing to play ball to come within a certain budget that you already have in mind? Be honest and say, there's not enough money in this job to build this, but what can we do to still give you something that's going to look great? And so that's a lot of what we do. That's a lot of what I do, is ask those questions. I have an SOP for that to make sure I don't forget these questions. Because we get 30, 40 bid invites a week. I got 3 design build invites today, and they all require the same attention, and we want to make sure that whatever we propose and provide, can stand there for 30, 40, 50 years. So our questions come from protecting the customer, the client. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah,
That's
that
what
was
Tyler means.
great, David. We have another question here. Let me see if I can find it. And it's actually a really good question. Augustin asked the question again. Let me see. The whole screen went different here. So we're trying to find him. So he asked, do you keep samples of the overseas materials? How do you ensure the quality of those overseas material with long lead times? And then Tyler said, we try to request and keep samples of everything we do, especially if it's custom or long lead, because sometimes there's a future phase with the same materials, and having something on hand gives us a head start.
Yep.
The quality control thing is tough. A lot of our vendors will include a percentage of additional materials to account for waste and or damage. Typically, we can't control what happens in transit, so we have to be very diligent when it arrives to inspect it and take a million photos in case of freight damage.
Correct.
Well, and just this is, and Carrie can tag on with this, but we're still dealing with so many material delivery and supply chain issues for a
I would
lot
say,
of things.
yeah, big time. But even to take that a little bit further, so like if you are looking for a prefab or pre-finished material, like say a metal roofing, like a standing seam, a lot of times, which David probably knows this too, is you try to order, if you have multiple buildings, all the roofs at one time. That way they come off the same line in the same color batch. because you can get differing colors.
Correct.
If you order it, one building a month and then another building a month later, they might be variations in there. So
Correct.
that makes things a little bit difficult for scheduling, right? Because now you
Yes.
can't order your roofing for
Correct.
3 or 4 more months, and then you're already looking at 16 weeks or something on top of that, right? So that's where a lot of the design, build, and pre-con come into play. Is
Yes.
understanding those dates and timelines early on is critical. Even though vendors won't hold them anymore, but it's it's a constant battle, and it's getting bad on some things.
And
really.
To talk on that a little bit more, when you say samples, that's a lot of times when we get invited to the design build. So I was at Quering's office maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, on this very large project here in town. That's as much as I'll say on that project. But it has a product that comes from overseas. But we have to get that vendor involved very early. So to make sure that if there's 10,000 square feet, that might seem like a lot, but there's jobs that have 50,000 square feet of one product, and that's a lot of material to source. For the project, if that product's needed a year and a half from now, material is going to go up. And so if we can get very early in the phase, we can protect against those increases. The way we do that is like you mentioned, Carrie, sometimes, you want to order 30,000 square feet of metal roof panels. That's maybe the supplier can't paint all that at one time. Maybe they can't produce all those panels at one time, but we'll buy a coil, have $50,000-$60,000 coil sitting there for 6 months until we need it, because we don't want to have to eat the cost. We don't want the customer to eat the cost. We don't want to wait another 6 months for that material to be ready when we already knew the color, which is why for us, the middles and pre-con are key. If we get a color approved, it's a custom color, everybody agrees on it's going to be a gray with a metallic or a platinum color to it, and it's got to have a micro finish, whatever it is, and how particular they want to be, that's fine. We can agree on it, order that, have it sit in our factory, in our facility, in a warehouse somewhere for 6 months to a year. Protect against that. Overseas materials, we buy from Japan, I mentioned. No fiber cement panels are made in the States, so we have to buy those from Europe or from somewhere in America. So we have to buy those, 6 months to a year in advance. And the shop drawings and submittals are key, because a lot of these are modular panels. They have to be cut once to the right dimension. Some of them get clips in the back that have to be put on in the factory, within a certain tolerance, within a certain pressure. And so there's a lot of cost of protecting that. There's a lot of cost of storing that. And we have to learn that. We have to analyze that. We have to understand that, and work with the customer very close. Tyler, for instance, on Matilda Torres, was there for 2 years, and that project, some of the panels took 16 weeks to get. We had to work with the general contractor on critical path and understanding that's the manufacturer that was specified. That's how long it's going to take after shop drawings, after submittals. So with those buildings, that was with nothing on it for 4 months. And so owners don't like that. It looks weird. We don't like it, because we have guys that are available that can put the panels on. We just don't have the material. But I mean, to us, it's almost normal now. And one thing that we mentioned is that during COVID, we were ordering materials on time, and because of COVID and how long it took things to get, we got very good at ordering materials way in advance. And I mean, Tyler can speak on that more than I can, because he does all the ordering of materials for all his projects. But we're not going to be late to a project. We're not going to be. The expectation is set there since the day the general contractor broke ground. There was a schedule built for a reason, and we have to work backwards. And if for whatever reason the product specified doesn't meet the schedule, we'll go back to the general contractor and the design team and say, what can we do? And we'll figure it out. That's what construction requires: coordination, collaboration. It's to us, it's normal, at least for me as well. It's kind of normal. You get to know who sells what, for how much, how often, when, and then you tell the general contractor, don't use that. That's going to take you 3 months more to get. If you use this, it looks the same and costs less, and it performs just as well. Having that knowledge and insight definitely helps. And we do work, like I said, materials that are used here in the Valley are different from the Bay Area.
Oh, yeah.
The marine coat finish are different. They take longer. Only certain manufacturers can provide it. Architects from up north are different from the Valley architects. They have different expectations, different code requirements, different products. We actually stock a lot of material here, so we don't have any issues on that. So we have a massive warehouse where we store a lot, and I mean a lot of stuff. So
There's a term that everyone will hear in this room sometime in the industry. It's called value engineering.
yeah, so yes,
It means I want the same thing for less money
less money.
faster. So how do we VE this? So
Yes.
yeah.
And so that's kind of when my first question, and somebody asked earlier, what's the first question you usually give to the design team is, how do we make sure we don't have to do this 5 times or 10 times? When excuse the expression, but we don't need the practice to do this building 3, 4, 5 times. We want to do this once, twice, 3 times, okay. But when it starts getting to 4 to 5, and because there's not enough money to build something, it gets very frustrating on all ends. To build something, it's some things take 2, 3 years to get to the point to build, and then we want to make sure that all resources are used on the things that that are going to get built. I mean, this Fresno State project didn't happen overnight. Many years before there was an RFP that Fresno State had some money and had to spend it and had to use it, and then we had to stay within a certain budget. And there was VE options done on that project. There was 4 revisions on our proposal just for the metal siding, metal wall panels. That's not the sheet metal. That's just the metal panels. And so
You got to remember that budget was based on pricing 2 years ago before it even went out to bid. So
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we have to protect, even with materials from overseas. Our markets are different from theirs.
Mm-hmm.
When we say communications in the States is very quick, in Europe they don't treat communication relationships the way we do. And in Asia it's not the same. We might need something today, they need a week. They're like, this is not how we work. We don't work at your pace. We need a week. We have to understand that different cultures work at different paces. Different countries value some things more than others, and so we have to work with that, and we do it all the time. And so we just want the owner and the general contractor to know this is what we're working with. And sometimes it takes longer than we wish, and it's like, well, my hands are tied, but we get it built. I mean, we've never had any liquidated damages. We will not have that. Everybody knows what that is. Basically, there's a certain day there's supposed to be occupancy. If you don't get it, you get back charged by the owner. We've never had that. We will now have that. So because we have a lot of layers to what we do to protect against those issues and the schedule, whatnot. I don't know if there's any other questions on that.
Great question, Augustin. You opened up a can of worms.
Yeah. Yes. Just some sensitive spots.
Yes.
We could go down that rabbit hole for quite a while.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So David, I just wanted to
Yes.
let you know it's about 20 after. So take as much time as you need. I just was giving you the time, so
Well, to me, it's like I said, the next part that I wanted to touch was and I had put this on here, potential careers for students, for undergrads, for professionals. We're hiring all the time. Every Monday we have a meeting where we announce the open positions. We're growing constantly. Like I said, we're 100 employees, just over that. And so we have internships. We work closely with CTech, sorry. We have high school students that work year round with us. They work in our shop, they work in the field, they work in their office, and more often than not they get hired on. One of our PEs, she's straight out of high school but had already worked with us for a whole year, so she's hit the ground running. We work with people's schedule. RJ, I know you asked the question earlier how to apply. I know you're kidding, but it's we're always looking for great people. We're growing. We have a lot of work already in our backlog. You can always come by the office and talk or fill an application online. This isn't a sales pitch or anything like that. I'm just saying that we have a lot of opportunity. I started here as a drafter myself, and now I'm the senior estimator, the lead estimator, and so there's a lot of room for growth. We're hiring constantly, and the construction industry, at least the way we analyze it, there's a lot of work to come. We do public and private work. We do design build, design assist, lease spec, skill and train work. So there's not a lot we do or can't do, and so there's a lot of opportunity. I can
And
keep going
David,
on that, but yes,
I have a question actually.
course.
You know, our program, and this is for David
Mhm.
and Tyler.
Yep.
But our program is very focused on having our students go and work for GCs. And
Okay.
I always say, because I've got my own business, and we're actually going to be starting like a construction entrepreneurship program
Awesome.
at Fresno State for, you know, folks that want to start their own businesses or subcontracting businesses, etc. But one of the things is we do get some students that are very interested in working in the Valley.
Okay.
And so they tend to focus in on a specialty contractor like yourselves. And so what are the advantages, do you think, of working like that you've experienced yourself about working for a specialty contractor versus a GC?
The benefits, the pros. For me in particular, we have to get in the weeds of every single project we do. There's no general project. There isn't a project like the next. Even if we build the same project twice, we do it better the next time. That's for me, is working close with general contractors from Fresno, from Sacramento, from the Bay, that come from out of state, multi-billion-dollar general contractors. We get to work with those because of what we do. We're a specialty that not a lot of people do or can or want to do, because it takes a lot of work. And if you make a mistake, it costs a lot of money. And so we're unique in that way. And so we get to work with a lot of general contractors. I love meeting new people. If you guys haven't been able to tell, I can talk. So I like to meet new people. I like to meet new faces. I like to shake a lot of people's hands. I like to understand why they're in the construction industry. Like RJ, why does that he does what he does for AECOM? They're a big company. Building for somebody like that, working with somebody like that in our specialty is awesome. We get to have vendors come in from Israel, from India, from Africa, from Germany. We got to meet a lot of multinational people because of what we do. Metal isn't just in the States. It's new to Fresno, but it's all over Europe, and so we have a lot of people that come from Spain that we talk with, and so they have a different culture, and so I love the different culture, the diversity of the people that we have to meet with. Everybody's got an idea, and I love collaborating with people. 4C's in particular, we're a big company. We can say that now. We're no longer a small business, but we treat it like a small business. It's a family-owned business, and it's great to work with them. It's great to work even like with framers. We coordinate a lot with framers. We coordinate a lot with glazers. With coordinate a lot with painters. We do a lot of coordination, and so at least in the subcontractor role as a specialty, it's nice to work, all over the valley, all over the state, traveling, to meet new people, once a week, every other week, going out of state to meet new people is awesome. It's a great experience, and then at the end we stand back and we built something beautiful, something amazing, and so that's the way I look at it. I don't know, Tyler can speak on his. Working with the general contractors, I mean, there's some great ones, and then there's some that you're like, man, this is so difficult. But I like turning it around and say, how can we, they've built so many things, how can we help them be better? That's the way I look at it. And so, which is why I ask the questions I ask, to help, get the juices flowing, and understanding is get the conversation going. If you're in the construction industry and you're building something big, you can only fake it till you make it for so long. There's a lot of good builders in the valley. There's a lot of great builders. There's a lot of great subcontractors that work here and that do work all over the state just like we do, because we have a great culture. We have a great mindset here in the valley that not everybody shares with like we do in the state. And so for me, it's nice to come in as an outsider and go to Sacramento, we're an outsider, but we're good people, and we come to offer great services. Um, um, I I've been here 8 years, and before this, I worked with the structural engineer architecture firm, and um, you know, you attack the same beast a different way, and so it's I love it, I enjoy it. I come to work every day, and I get to do this too, so it's awesome. I don't know how else to say. I just it's to me it's easy to speak on this. It's just fun. I enjoy it, and so
And David, to tag on to your estimating experience, can you give the students here some tips? I'm gonna
yeah,
steer you back to
of course,
estimating
yeah, of course, no, of course,
without giving away any industry trade secrets or anything. Can you give them some tips on, when you're doing your quantity takeoffs and
Mhm.
stuff? What are some steps that you recommend going through to prepare for quantity takeoff? What's important, in doing yours, and, maybe just give them some tips.
Yeah. So for me, the first thing, and I didn't learn this from the beginning. I didn't know this starting estimating. Um, it's coming from having the mindset of I don't know everything is one. I have not this Fresno State project that we did. It's the first time I've seen this many profiles, this many colors on the building. That got me excited. So um, just knowing that I need to learn as I'm doing this helps me ask questions. So for instance, on projects like this, I call Tyler all the time. I bring it to my office. Can we talk about this? So as an estimator and as anybody in the construction field, getting out of your comfort zone and asking the hard questions and not being embarrassed and saying, I don't know, or I think this is what you mean, but I'm not sure. Can you help me look at this? I think this is what we need to do. Or can you give me a second opinion on, because at the end of the day, I'm committing 4C's to produce and provide something for a certain dollar amount. And I want to make sure that we have enough and that we're protected. And if there's a mistake, that I know where that mistake was made. And then we have Tyler's great to work with. Tyler comes to my office and say, "Hey, did you figure this?" And I might sometimes say no. Thank you. I might have missed something, and Tyler comes into my office and say, "Hey, did you pick this up?" I was like, "I missed that," and he said, "We'll take care of it. I got it." There's jobs that Tyler will come in and say, "Man, this is great. We need to do this again." But for an estimator, it's putting yourselves in the shoes of I'm learning constantly. When I look at a project, I can't look at it from I got this, I know what I'm doing. Like I know everything. No, I don't know everything. And so therefore I'm gonna ask the questions. I'm gonna look at every single detail. I'm not gonna assume. It's estimation. I look at it from exactimation. And that takes time. I'd rather do it right once. I don't want to do it twice. And so and at the same time I feel accountable. And I've been given a responsibility to protect 4C's on this end. And so whether you're an estimator, project engineer, superintendent, project manager, you're responsible for something within the company. You're valuable. And so therefore, I look at it from that lens whenever I do a takeoff. So when I look at all these details, the architect went into great detail to put all these details together because he found it necessary that I, as a subcontractor, need this. And so therefore, I'm going to make sure I go through every single detail and highlight every single call out. And if something is not called out, I will ask the question. And so, which is why we color code everything. Because in our world, we're a sheet metal worker, and we have different wages, pay rates that we have to pay depending on the state, the DIR requirements. And so we have to track everything by scope. For instance, a framer doesn't get paid the same as a plaster cell. A glazier does not get paid the same as a plumber. We don't get paid the same as a roofer. We have different wages, and so everything is classified differently in the state of California. And so we need to make sure that everything is coded correctly from the beginning. That when I say this is a metal panel, it gets paid at a certain wage. When I say this is sheet metal, that's a different wage. Sometimes it costs more, sometimes it costs less. And so we code everything. That's why you see on our submittals, everything is coded. That's why you see on our submittals, everything, there's a project number and there's wall panels details. This is specific to this scope, specific to that section, specific to that cost code in our job, in the project. but it all starts from the estimation. So for instance, the numbers don't mean anything to me. It's the name and the color. So if it's wall panels, then I go in and I literally go through every single detail, and I will actually start from the cover sheet and go down. I'll take a review and I'll look at understanding what the scope of work is. Usually the project gives a description. This is the angle, this is the square footage. And so I like to read this. Not all projects are clean, cut, dry. Some projects have alternates. Some projects have VE options built in already to the estimate that you need to provide. I need to make sure that I know that from the beginning. I start from the first page and work my way down. And the biggest thing that I've learned is a set of documents, whether those are plans and specs, it's one whole set of documents. You can't look at the drawings and not look at the specs. You cannot look at the architecturals and then ignore the structurals. You have to coordinate with all of them. The mechanical might show something for the sheet metal. It might have a penetration. There's some place in the building we need to look at. There's drawings for fire sprinklers. There's penetrations that we have to account for. I mean, for instance, if we look back at Fresno State, and just to show you guys on the photos, I didn't comb through all the pictures, but I'll show you guys all the pictures. But there are penetrations throughout the building that cost money, take time, that we have to detail, that we have to order, and this is a custom material, so we need to make sure that's accounted from the beginning. There's another penetration here. There's a slight offset here with soffit panels or plaster. We need to make sure that that's figured into our estimate. We need to make sure that that's accounted for. There's another one here. You know, these are openings. There's rivets that go on here. There's sealant that goes around. And I mean, there's a lot of penetrations. There's a lot of things that happen on these buildings that it's not clean, cut, dry always on the drawings. So we have to coordinate and understand if there's a roof drain there, there has to be an overflow. There has to be an outlet somewhere. If now there's Wi-Fi sensors and projectors and there's cameras everywhere. So we have to figure those into the penetrations of the building. That's a waterproofing issue. We did a project at Cal Poly where there was a mock-up made specifically for all the penetrations. It cost $50,000, but that's what was required to make sure that, you know, these buildings didn't leak in Cal Poly because it rains, because there's fog, because there's a lot of moisture. So when I'm looking at these drawings, you know, this elevation here, for instance, in the drawings, just to go back to them, yeah, that's these right here. These are the metal panels. There's one keynote here, only one call out here. These are not referenced, but I have to understand that all these take metal panels and they're not flat. It's not a flat wall. You look at back at the picture, I'm gonna show multiple screens so that way we can go through quickly on them. You know, there's slight bends to them. There's a metal there that's gonna take longer than this side because it's difficult. You know, there's a lot of things that go to it versus a 2D drawing versus what's gonna look like in real life. So the architect drew this, put details everywhere, and we need to make sure we capture all those. And so it makes it easier because I don't need Tyler to do what I just did again. It's gonna take him time. It's taking it cost money. So I will take the time to highlight everything. And I removed all the highlights just to show you what that means. But here's a soffit panel. So then I highlight the soffit panel. And there's a trim here. So therefore I'll highlight this trim. And then actually it keeps going all the way to the top because all these components are something I need to attribute a cost to. And one thing that I want to share with you guys is what we do is a specialty, and that means not everything is going to draw the way it's going to be built. Not everything, which is why we do our submittals. And so if you were to look at this condition in our submittals, that's this condition here. So now you have a similar condition, and this is how we detail it. And so And we do in our submittals, we'll actually go back in and reference the details of where we pull this from the architecture drawings. So if I miss a highlight within this detail during the pre-con, so our PEs go through and they check my highlights and they say, hey, you didn't highlight this. Do we have that? That's time. That's money being spent when I forgot to highlight something. And there are detail references missed if I don't highlight it, if I don't call attention to it. So my job is to make sure that we capture everything. And there's going to be a detail made. And then our shop makes this. We make this here internally. And so we need to make sure that we capture the correct amount of material required to make this bend. When you look at this, that all takes material, and material, coil or flat sheets for metal panels only come in certain widths and certain lengths. And so we have to be very smart in how we use our material. And so before I do any takeoff, I highlight all the details. Before I do any takeoff, I need to know if there's going to be 6 types of scopes, 7 types of scopes. If there's metal roof panels on this job, I need to know how many, the lengths of the panels. I need to know the width of the panel. I need to go into the spec and understand. They might, for instance, they didn't show a closure here, but it requires a closure there because of the manufacturer's specifications, because of the manufacturer requirements. Back to the comments made. There are things that we need to factor in that aren't detailed, but they're detailed enough. And we're professionals. We're the ones who need to know this. The architect is not going to draw exactly the way we want him to build it every single time. We're the professionals. That's what we get paid to do. That's why we get brought in as a project team, to make sure we can account for that. This is, going back to an owner or general contractor saying we don't have that foam closure there. That's negligence. That's a little absurd. So what us as estimators need to make sure we have that covered. And a big thing that we need to always look at is there's usually a wall assembly. And usually the project requires a wall assembly. If it's going through DSA, it requires a wall assembly. If it's going through the fire marshal, it requires a wall assembly. Because everything that's being used needs to either have an ICC report or an ESR report. And our fasteners have to have a report as well. And so as an estimator, I need to know that I need to reference back to this detail 3 on 502, which is this here. And then that tells me that and everywhere that I have a metal panel, I need to have a Z channel with weep holes. And that's important because these panels are vertical and these Z channels are horizontal. They're going to either capture water or hold water where we don't want it to hold water, which is why they put weep holes. So when I do my takeoff, I need to know it's a 16 gauge because that costs more than 22 gauge, that costs more than 24. It's an expensive product. We're going to make it here in our shop. I need to make sure I capture it, and I need to make sure I capture the correct amount of screws and how many. And keynote, which is not something you're going to see on the elevations, which is why I start with the details always. Architects make specific notes because in the past, and this is by their experience, their knowledge, water has gotten through the building because of this. So therefore they protect against it. And if I don't look at this and I don't read the details correctly and I don't highlight it and I don't draw attention to it as an estimator, not saying the project team will not capture it, but I didn't draw the attention necessary to it. So that's before I do any takeoff, I comb through this and we build a scope letter. And I'm not going to show you a scope letter. So, but Queering has seen it, BMY has seen it, but it's very detailed. Sometimes it's 5 pages long. It's not 1 page, it's not a spec section, it's detail by detail of what it is that we're providing and everything to meet the spec, the conditions, exactly what is required to do this job. And then it gets reflected in our submittals and shop drawings. And I want to show you guys what it means to do a takeoff and why we do it the way we do for our submittals and our shop drawings. Because when we go through the elevations, these are the same elevations. This is the architecture drawings. These are our submittals. This is how much detail we go into every single piece of metal that is going to be put in just on these elevations. And we've been told, and we live by the standard, by generals and by architects that we have some of the best shop drawings they've ever seen, because we put a lot of emphasis on this. Building this is not, it's not a 2D, it's not 2D. You can't capture this with small details. You have to detail every condition. There's a roof panel right here, there's a ledge here that we have to detail, that we have to waterproof. These panels are cut at a taper. We have to make sure that we have that trim accounted for. We need to know what color is expected from us on that trim. We need to make sure that in our bid we have this covered. These penetrations, they take time. You know, these are difficult to do. And so we need to make sure that we capture that in our estimate. And it looks great. You know, I'm proud to say we do a hell of a job putting in these panels, the sheet metal. But it all starts from the beginning and making sure we have it captured. Which is why you see the way you guys can see the way I have things set up is I usually run on AutoCAD. I run Revu Advanced. I have the extreme version. That's what I use. That's what I've always liked to use, because it has a lot more functionality than just the Revu CAD does. So I use extreme, and I always use Revu Advanced because it's versatile. It allows me to organize myself the way I want to. And like I said, we want to make sure that we're capturing everything live and that we're doing it correctly. And so, which is why on this one particularly, I made 2 wall types in our takeoff, but that's not what I used to do takeoff. I actually need to use a measuring tool. So there's a wall type 1 and wall type 3, which is always begs the question of why not metal wall type 2? I don't know. The architect decided to skip number 2. But we need to make sure that we have it captured, and there's a difference in color. So we need to make sure we capture that differently. You know, this one has 1 profile in 1 color. This one has 3 different profiles with 3 different colors. And so this is not going to be the same cost as this. This is not going to take the same labor. And I'll show you guys what I mean when we go into detail. You know, this takes time to do in the field as an installer. Let me expand it so you guys can see it a little better. You know, making sure we meet this layout properly when we get panels in crates, because that's how they come, takes time. And this panel needs to be there because it needs to match there, because that's how the architect expects it from us. And this is the pattern we need to follow. And these need to align. So I need to factor that into our bid, or an estimate, into our estimate. I mean, and back to this takes time, but this is what our project engineers do. This is what our superintendents make sure to check when the material arrives. This is what our foreman needs to make sure that he matches our submittals when he's doing the install. That it's done properly one time at the beginning, and we don't have to go back and do it again, because nobody wants to take off. These are soffit panels. Nobody wants to take off panels. It costs money, it costs time, it's embarrassing, and we bid it with so many hours. And so when we do a takeoff, I work closely with the manufacturer and understand and figure out, you know, there's even a number amount of panels. That's what it looks like. That's what the architect has told us. These panels all cost exactly the same, but they cost as much as this one. And there's a minimum we need to purchase here of each single color. These are not standard colors, these are custom colors. So I'll go in and I will take off metal wall panel 3, because it has a different cost than metal wall panel 1. Now, it didn't work. Oh, it's not doing it. Sorry. Why is it not doing it? I don't know if it's because I should do it without me having to do this. It's not doing it for some reason. Oh, I remember why.
It's because we're watching you, David.
I don't know why I did that.
I know.
It was just fine. I actually just did some mock-ups there so you guys could see it. Just so you guys know, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you hold shift, it keeps it at a 45 or 90 degree. I don't know if you guys know this. Not everybody does. If you hold shift on your keyboard, it'll keep it straight line consistently. It's not working. Maybe metal wall panel 1. Nope, it's not working either.
So David, I'm just curious, like
Yeah.
these, for the shop drawings.
Yeah.
And how you're going to build it,
Mhm.
you're taking that off in detail. When you do an estimate for, say, an RFP or something for a GC,
Yep.
You've got to get those things out so that you can get a job. Are you going to be doing this detail of an estimate? This is kind of a leading question. This detail of an estimate that you're doing for the shop drawings when you're doing, say an RFP.
So it depends on what stage of the project you're at. So if it's an RFP and Corian comes to us and says, hey, we have a project where it looks like they're specifying an AP span panel that's a concealed fastener. Looks like it's going to be 2 colors. Don't know their customer premium or standard. And the building is 40 feet tall. We have around 10,000 square feet. We have a good idea as to what that costs a square foot. With the amount of history we have, I typically call the manufacturer and say, hey, I have exactly this. What is what I'm being told. Can you give me a quote, a budget quote with with a 6 months escalation cost or how far you can project? Give me a cost. And I can put the labor to it. It really depends. The RFPs don't go into great detail. Usually the general contractor respects our time and gives us as much information as it can. When we did this project, we didn't know it was going to be custom colors. We just knew it had to be this type of profile. So when they said to us, hey, this is going to be a premium color, we had a conversation with them as so far nothing has told us to go in that direction. So there's a cost to that. And they were okay with that. But that's what you do when you have, you work with good people, good builders, good general contractors. Not everybody takes that, it takes it that way. Sometimes they think we're trying to pull one on them and say, well, you just want more money. There's 2 estimators here. There's 2 of us, and we have limited resources. So when we take on a job, especially this size, we go into a lot of detail. With the end goal of we've already had a lot of conversations with the general. The project is going to happen, and we want to make sure we're part of it. And so we don't want to generalize. We don't want to speculate on numbers. When it's like this, we will go into detail, which is why we have build components for all this. There's a transition here. We will make sure we capture that, and then we put this. We produce the actual CSV file, produce that, pull those numbers and put it into our takeoff sheet, which allows us to calculate how much caulking, which allows us to know how many fasteners, which allows us to know how many corners, allows us to know how many panel cuts we need to do. It allows us to know how many openings, how many window sills we have, because they cost a lot of money. It's a lot of this information is as good as we use it. So it's what you do with it. I can tell you there's 790 square feet on this wall, or 729. The area should be 790, but realistically, it's only this much is being used so far. But knowing that the material limitations is, let's say, 15 feet, there's going to be a joint here. So I have to factor in a joint here. When you look at the actual website and you look at the photos, there's a joint there, right? Because this material limitation can only span so far. This profile can only be made in such length. That might not be captured. This one, it meets it barely. And so there's some areas that we need to add additional trim. This one's perfectly fine that we need to have a conversation with the contractor about. But that's a lot of what we do. We capture is making sure that we know how many linear feet of this component. So for instance, I say words like if I know if everybody knows what I'm saying, because I do it every day. But we put gold in sunset because this material is going to be seen. This piece of flashing here, it's a big piece of flashing that's 10 inches, might not be clearly detailed out in the architecturals, but we know it needs it. There might not be, it might be, they might actually detail it out. They call it base trim flashing. They show something here, and that's about it. But now they show something here, but it's not called out. So I don't know if you guys can see. I don't know if the zooming in it's clear or not. But this call out is referencing this flashing. Nothing is referencing this. This only saying self-heated flashing. But there's a piece of metal here, some things here. And so that's kind of where the takeoff and reviewing the drawings comes into play. If we will draw it, so I will physically actually draw it in here. And I will actually make a cloud. If it loads. There you go. And I'll make a comment to the general contractor. This is drawn, but not shown. But this is drawn, but not called out. Please confirm that this is required.
And they probably make it into an RFI.
Correct.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if we have the project, we would RFI it ourselves. So
right.
If it's pre-construction, or I mean pre-bid, they typically write the RFI. They like to. That's how usually it is. And so we will do this, and then that way we know exactly what to take off, because this will be a surprise down the road. Because when you're building something this size, you're not thinking about this flashing. You're not thinking about the small component.
Right.
You're not thinking about the screws. You're not thinking about that. If this piece of metal goes around the entire building, you might have 1,000 feet unaccounted for of a custom color that comes from, LA that, costs $3,000 to get here just on freight. So those are the things that we look for. And then we go through layers. And so we don't have a lot of time left, but one thing I want to share with you guys is we like to create flags for everything that we're going to use repetitively, because bouncing back and forth takes time. I use a very wide monitor, so I can do a takeoff through a very wide screen. So I will literally split my screen into 4s. And I don't know how wide you guys can see it, but I will split mine into 4 because I want to be able to see the detail. I want to be able to see the floor plan. I want to be able to see the actual elevation of where I'm referencing at the same time. And then I would also like to see an actual section when a building jogs in, when a building jogs out. Does there jog completely through the building, or is it just the first floor? And so, when you look at this, and when you're looking at the east elevation, north is pointing to the left. So then you're looking at the east, it's this side. So, understanding where you are orientated to the building, and knowing, this might be over here, this might be a concrete building. That doesn't require that piece of flashing. Because concrete, you don't need to flash anything on a concrete building. It's a solid wall. And so that's where, for us, those are the things that come back if we don't capture those things, which is why it's very, very necessary that we go through every single detail, highlight everything, coordinate it, ask these questions. Well, I actually like to fill it in, and actually, it's not, you can't see it, I guess. Sorry.
So David,
Yes,
I just wanted to let you know it's just a few more minutes before 10, so we probably should wrap it up here soon.
Yes. So for us, from the beginning, it's just really setting up how you want to receive your numbers is key on how you want to set up, whether you're doing studs that are 16 gauge versus 18 gauge. Those have a different cost. Those have a different way of getting installed. These panels have a different way of getting installed maybe than these panels because of access of equipment. Do we want to separate that cost? Do we want to separate that labor? So however you want to see your numbers is how we organize ourselves from the beginning. There might be 6 different metal panel takeoffs, or wall types because of the height, because some might go over concrete and not metal framing. So that's different. That's harder to go through concrete than it is metal studs. And so whatever you do here is going to be key, because the spreadsheet's going to only produce as good as your actual setup is, your layers that you build. Like, this is flooring. Is this really what I want to be at? No, I want to put this as metal panels. So I want to make sure it's at the right wall panels. So I need to create another wall panel type 2. Then I create another wall panel type 3. If you're doing roofing, some areas might have tapered roofing, some might not. If you're doing studs, some might have a double wall, some might not. Some might have dens versus plywood. Those are different costs. You want to code everything. The way you code it is the way the spreadsheet is going to produce the numbers. I created on here legends. You can, once you do a takeoff, you can literally just select. If you hold shift on the keyboard, you click and you drag, it'll grab everything that took off there. You right click on it, and you can create legend, create new legend, and it'll automatically take a minute, and it'll tell you exactly what you covered here in this area. So even if you wanted to do just snips, bits and pieces at a time, you can do that. And you can write this down if you want to. If you don't want to produce a spreadsheet and you feel more comfortable doing it this way because it's cleaner, because it's easier to read, to digest, you can do it per elevation. This is, metal roof panels, have different components. There's the E flashing, a fascia, the gutter, the high eave, the rake flashing, the metal roof panels, square footages. These are scopes that we do. They all require different things. They all require different components that you physically would code yourself to death if you did it here. So you produce these and then you put them onto your spreadsheet that you made. That's how we use it. That's how I use it. To stay organized, which allows us to produce these call them amazing shop drawings. Because, for instance, we have these metal roof panels. This is the product we specify. It's easy, digestible. These are the locations. It's hard to see that from the elevations, but this is where we have the metal roof panels. There's a reason, we detail this. We incorporate even our other metals or components. I'm not sure if you can still see the whole screen or not. But it really depends on how you want those numbers to come out, what you want them to show you. So for us, this setup is key. The organizing of your bookmarks are key. If you're gonna create bookmarks, the easiest way for us is if you click one of these, just select them all, and then you want to make sure. Oh, sorry. This one already did it. Sorry. So if you didn't have them, you would select all. You would click here, and it'll automatically populate it'll name all your sheets. So then you can automatically just generate these as you need. You can cut, and it's easier to sift through the pages this way than it is to try to read everything. I don't need to know every single finished plan on the levels. I don't. It doesn't affect my scope. It doesn't affect me, but I do need to know there's roof A, roof B, there's a reflective ceiling plan, and you can color coordinate these depending on how you want to see that. I might want to see all my soffit as blue, or sorry, my roofing as orange. That's how we see it. That's we identify roofing as orange internally. The reflective ceiling, I want to make that blue because that reminds me I have soffit panels there. So this is, and same thing with metal panels. With I duplicated this one. Delete. Building elevations, that might be green. And so it depends on what you want to do. It's hard to tell. You can do okay. And then save a lot. You can create these tools. You can modify these tools. You click on it. These are generated already in here. You can create your own tool set. You can duplicate some of these. You can just right click and hit duplicate. You can duplicate those. You can add a layer within here. There's so many ways that you could modify this from up here. You can modify it from down here. I always say work top down, because whatever you do here, you want to make sure that you're working within the correct scale. before you do anything, and make sure that the properties you have set is what you want to do, and then you just go. So work top down. Whenever you set up anything on Bluebeam, that's how we do it. Everyone tweaks a little bit differently here internally. Like I said at the beginning, I like to use Red Advanced. It's always been my favorite thing. I like the extreme version. It allows you so much versatility if you want to create forms, create layers. I love to use Studio. Larger projects require Studio. For tracking of R5s, tracking update drawings, ASIs, bulletins, addendums. Yeah, this is how we work, and we color code everything, regardless of how small or how big the job is. And then all that gets transferred into a budget that the PM does, and that gets reflected here on the shop drawings. And it's already 9:04, and I know I didn't touch on the takeoff as much as I wanted to. And but to us, this is the most important part: setting this up correctly, labeling it, putting it on the right layer. So see, this is the wrong layer, so you need to modify that. So
this is a reason to bring you back, David.
anytime, because I mean, like I said, this didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in a year. We've been using Bluebeam for, I want to say 6 years, 7 years now. It all started at Cal Poly, and we realized, we were using Adobe Acrobat. It was not great. It's hard to do anything with that. This is what we use it for. We actually do some shop drawings and submittals through Bluebeam if needed. So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, this has been just great, David. And there's so many questions that I have that we would love to have you come back. So usually every semester we do a talk. We do a speaker series. And so we'll definitely send you another invite if you're interested. So maybe you can
definitely
continue on with this. But we would just want to thank you very much for taking your time and Tyler's time to come and speak with us. I know it was a little hard to pin you guys down, probably because you've been so busy with all these jobs.
Yes.
But I think it's just been a great exposure for the students. And we look forward to having you come back on campus to do meet and greets, and hopefully to come back and speak with us at the Bug User Group. One thing that is, Luis said thank you. Yeah, there's a bunch of people that said thank you. And actually tomorrow we're coming out with a crowdfunding campaign. So for our Bug User Group and for the commercial team. And so we might reach out to Tyler and see if you can help us with that, or maybe even with some of our presentation slides for the commercial team. So
yeah,
we'll definitely keep
feel free to reach out.
The
sooner you reach out, the more time we have to get organized.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, you guys. So I hope everyone has a great evening. We just again want to thank for our guests, and I'll see most of you in classes. Some of you I don't teach, but have a great evening. And I'm going to stop the recording here and just say goodbye to everybody. So bye, everybody. And I'll stick